I will not sit on a bag of beans unless they scream. That was Zarnok's opening line as he entered the therapy chamber. He said it with the solemnity of a man who'd once vaporized a moon for misquoting his favorite poem. Lyssa didn't even flinch. She just jabbed a finger at the circle of beanbags and whispered, "Try." So Zarnok, High Chancellor of Emotional Supremacy, self-appointed, did what any cosmic warlord would do under pressure from a sentient HR intern with authority issues. He sat. With a sound like 12 overripe grapefruits giving up on life, the beanbag accepted him. Zarnok stiffened. His holographic cloak flared red, lava storm setting, as he scanned the room for hidden weapons, traps, and reasons to incinerate something. Instead, he found tea. A tray of herbal sachets floated by, piloted by a small earthling named Clara, whose aura smelled like eucalyptus and second-hand disappointment. "Chamomile?" she offered. Zarnok stared at the cup like it had just threatened his bloodline. Meanwhile, Lyssa had already slunk into the corner, arms folded, sunglasses on. She had that bored space princess look she used whenever Zarnok was about to learn a lesson the painful way. Zarnok did not trust this setting. There were too many soft surfaces, too much quiet. A circle of creatures arranged in a semi-threatening spiral formation. No honor blades, no anti-telepathy wards, not even a ceremonial scream pit. And then there was Karen. He clocked her immediately, mid-50s, sweater with a glittery cat. She brought gluten-free muffins and the kind of unresolved emotional energy that could collapse a nebula if left unchecked. Zarnok didn't trust her. She smiled too much. "Let's begin," said the therapist, a human male with elbow patches, a clipboard, and the vocal tone of a sedated goat. "Today, we're going to explore vulnerability." Zarnok blinked, then blinked again, then whispered to Lyssa, "Is this code? Are they trying to harvest my weakness through polite conversation?" Lyssa didn't answer. She was busy texting someone named Uff and mouthing the words, "Just breathe," to herself. The therapist asked everyone to go around the circle and share a little about what brought them here today. Zarnok tensed. He had many reasons. He had a scroll of reasons. Galactic betrayal, unworthy successors, a sentient slimeball named Vribo who sold him emotional incense that turned out to be scented glue. But none of that made sense to say out loud. So he defaulted to, "My enemies fear me, my followers adore me, and yet I wake up, feeling crunchy inside." A pause. Karen nodded. "I so relate to that." Zarnok recoiled. The others began sharing. Todd, the Earthling with 2 podcasts and no chin, talked about his mother's dog and something called codependency. Clara cried gently about her houseplants. Someone named Greg admitted he hadn't spoken to his father since 1992 and felt fine about it. Then cried anyway. Zarnok watched, horrified. These humans, they willingly exposed their inner rot for no strategic gain. No data mining, no mind probes, no ceremonial combat. It was chaos in slow motion. And yet, oddly structured. Everyone snapped their fingers when someone said something brave. Zarnok tried snapping. He cracked 3 fingers and accidentally summoned a small heat vortex. Karen clapped anyway. He was losing control of the room, of the narrative, of himself. And then came the icebreaker game. "Let's all draw our feelings as vegetables," the therapist announced, as if that were normal. Zarnok drew a sentient pepper holding a knife. Lyssa rolled her eyes so hard her implants pinged. Clara drew a crying potato. Todd drew himself as a tomato surrounded by knives. Karen drew Zarnok as a glowing eggplant. He hissed loudly, but no one seemed to notice. Because right then, someone lit a scented candle that smelled exactly like the volcanic pits of his childhood colony. And for one brief, disoriented moment, he missed home. That broke something. Not a lot. Just a hairline fracture in the polished obsidian of his soul. He blinked again, accepted the peppermint tea, and tried to remember the last time he had sat in a circle and no one died. That was how it began. Zarnok still didn't trust Karen, but he was starting to understand why Earthlings kept doing this strange ritual. Right up until the man with the clipboard said, "Next week, we'll be doing role play. I have bled for my empire. I have watched galaxies fall, and once I hugged a puppy, it exploded." That was how Zarnok chose to open up. The room went silent. The beanbags collectively tensed. Karen nodded like she got it. The therapist, who'd clearly been hoping for something less interstellar, smiled bravely and said, "Thank you, Zarnok. That was a lot of sharing." Zarnok wasn't done. He rose slowly, eyes glowing faintly violet. and declared, "I shall now recount the betrayal of Sector 12, a tale of mutiny, of pain, of excessive decorative capes." Lyssa made a noise that sounded like an interdimensional sigh. Karen clutched her muffin with reverence. Zarnok began. 10 minutes in, he'd reenacted 3 coups, voiced 14 characters, and used a rolled-up yoga mat to demonstrate orbital tactics. He was just getting to the part where his lieutenant's spleen turned sentient when Todd raised a finger. "Hey man," Todd said, sipping from a mason jar full of emotional support kombucha, "this is a safe space, not a monologue." Zarnok froze mid-spleen. The cloak pulsed. "A what?" he asked, blinking in 7 frequencies at once. Todd held firm. "It's about sharing, not storytelling. We don't center ourselves, we hold space." Zarnok narrowed his eyes. "I would like to hold your spine, Todd." The therapist flinched. "Let's remember to use I statements," he said, with the desperation of someone one bad sentence away from a career change. Zarnok nodded solemnly, then turned to face the circle, placed a hand over his chest plate and said, "I disintegrated my father with a thought beam, and I regret nothing." A beat, then clapping. Clara wiped a tear. Karen whispered, "So brave." Todd blinked like he just got emotionally body slammed. Zarnok stood, confused, but taller. He liked this strange custom, applauding personal horror. Very therapeutic. Lyssa, however, had reached her limit. She slowly peeled her sunglasses off, rubbed her temples, and muttered something in untranslated sarcasm. "Are you all right?" the therapist asked gently. Lyssa didn't answer. She just tilted her head toward Zarnok and said, "You're doing amazing, sweetie," before slamming her forehead into her own knee. The sound echoed. Zarnok beamed. Emotionally. Also literally. The room grew warmer. "I have contributed," he announced. Karen clapped harder. Todd checked if the emergency exit was unlocked. The therapist scribbled something on his clipboard that looked suspiciously like "reassigned to goat yoga." And still, the session wasn't over. Because in that moment, as Zarnok basked in the glory of accepted emotional warfare, someone passed him a feelings worksheet and a crayon. That's when the real danger began. "I have learned that if I cry just enough, they give me cookies." Zarnok whispered this to Lyssa, cheeks still damp, one shortbread in each gauntlet. Lyssa blinked twice, slowly, then muttered, "Earth therapy is going to break the galaxy." Zarnok didn't hear her. He was too busy discovering his new favorite emotion, strategic vulnerability. Karen had declared him bravely raw. Todd had grudgingly fist-bumped him. The therapist had offered him a sticker that said, "Feelings matter." For the first time in recorded history, Zarnok was winning group therapy, until he heard the voice. "Let's all take a deep breath," it said, soft and smug like incense with Wi-Fi. Zarnok froze. No, that tone, that insufferable. He turned, and there he was. Prince Tharvik of Zorlon 7, former blood brother, ex-best friend, betrayer of brunch plans and galactic alliances. Now wearing flowing beige robes and a man bun. "A mindful heart," Tharvik said, "is the true path to peace." Zarnok's left eye began glowing, unintentionally. Lyssa dropped her phone into her tea. "You," Zarnok hissed. Tharvik smiled. "Brother?" "We are not brothers," Karen gasped. Clara clutched her potato drawing. "I thought you were devoured by sand leeches," Zarnok spat. "I was reborn," Tharvik replied, holding up a tiny gong. "In the fires of ego death. I teach now. I guide." "You stole my asteroid throne. I borrowed it, with intention. You replaced my war hymns with pan-flute playlists. They resonate at a healing frequency." Zarnok stood. The beanbag whimpered. "I will not be mindfully forgiven." Todd raised a hand. "I think this is a metaphor?" Zarnok turned to him, eye lasers twitching. "No, it is history." Tharvik gently struck the gong. "Let us begin a forgiveness meditation," he intoned. "Let us not." "Close your eyes," Tharvik said, "and picture your greatest wound. Then release it." Zarnok's hands sparked. "I pictured you sitting on my obsidian throne with your feet on the sacred magma buttons. Now release it." "I released a neutron imploder. Breathe." "I am breathing fire." Karen clapped politely. They're really working through something. The therapist, who'd been hiding behind a stack of therapy plushies, peeked out and whispered, "We're witnessing a major breakthrough." Zarnok snarled. "The only thing breaking is reality." He took a step forward. Tharvik remained still, then whispered, "I forgive you." Zarnok exploded, not physically, but spiritually, a tiny emotional nova behind the eyes. He blinked and sat back down, hard. The beanbag gave up and deflated permanently, For one glorious second, everything was still, until Tharvik said, "Next circle, we'll be exploring our inner child." Zarnok twitched because he remembered his inner child. And that little monster had fangs. I no longer know if I'm crying or just leaking from too many emotional ports. Zarnok whispered this into a rubber duck-shaped stress ball as the group dissolved into absolute chaos. The duck squeaked in support. Karen, somewhere between her third and fourth glass of cucumber water, had just announced, "I only married Greg because he had a telescope and a six-pack." Both turned out to be inflatable. Then she burst into tears, proclaimed Zarnok her cosmic soulmate, and asked to be baptized in volcanic ash. Zarnok nodded solemnly and handed her a tea bag. "By the power of steeping herbs, you are one of us now." Todd was filming everything. His live stream was titled Therapy or Cult, You Decide, Day 3. The comments were overwhelmingly pro-Zarnok. Lyssa stood dead center in the disaster, trying to wrestle the session back from the jaws of cosmic absurdity. She failed immediately. "Okay, everyone, let's take a deep role-play time," Tharvik announced, striking the gong like it owed him money. "No!" Lyssa barked. "Too late," the therapist cheered weakly. "You'll be Queen Mom. Zarnok is 5 years old and emotionally constipated. Begin." Lyssa blinked like she'd just been hit with a fridge. Zarnok stood, transformed. He shrank his posture, puffed out his lower lip, and began speaking in a childlike voice that echoed across galaxies. "I made a kaboom in the astro toilet, and Daddy never came home." Lyssa stared at him. "What?" "I'm a sad space boy, mommy queen." Karen sobbed louder. Todd whispered, "This is the best episode yet." The therapist was hiding behind her clipboard, whispering, "Breakthrough, breakthrough." Zarnok collapsed back onto the floor, still holding the duck, his cloak wrapped around him like a sobbing burrito. "I have unlocked a dimension of emotional horror," he choked, "from which there is no return." Lyssa finally sat down, on the floor, cross-legged, eyes vacant. She looked at no one and said, "I used to work in planetary diplomacy." Todd leaned in with the camera. "So, are you guys hiring?" Karen began humming the Zarnokian war chant, incorrectly. Zarnok tried correcting her, then gave up, then cried harder. Clara offered him a cinnamon rice cake. He took it, with the reverence of a man offered a final meal. "Is this what healing feels like?" he asked no one. No one answered. But the duck squeaked again, until the lights flickered, and a very familiar, overly confident voice echoed from the hallway. "Am I late to emotional devastation, or just fashionably enlightened?" Everyone froze because they recognized that voice, and it had 6 backup singers. "I accept this badge of emotional dishonor." Zarnok stared at the flimsy, earth-colored piece of recycled paper with the words "Group Therapy Level 1, participated without exploding," printed in Comic Sans. He held it like it was toxic. Lyssa gave him a slow clap, one-handed, on her own thigh. Karen cried again and asked if she could laminate hers in lava foil. The therapist beamed. "See? Look how far you've come." Zarnok blinked. He had come far, from rage to crying, from crying to cookies, from cookies to leading a short-lived cult, and now, paper recognition. He glanced at Lyssa. She raised an eyebrow. "This was week 3, remember?" Zarnok looked horrified. "There are more? 12 total. I will not survive." "Nope." The therapist rang a tiny bell to close the space. Tharvik bowed. "May your chakras remember this breakthrough." Zarnok smiled. It was not a kind smile. He leaned in, voice low, almost tender. "I will remove each of your chakras, individually." Tharvik just handed him a granola bar and walked away. Karen tried to get it autographed. Todd was still live streaming, whispering, "We may have witnessed the birth of a space messiah." Zarnok stood, shook imaginary glitter off his shoulders, then walked to the sign-up sheet. "I, Zarnok the Magnificent," he declared, "shall bring muffins." Everyone froze. Even Lyssa looked up. "Muffins," she repeated. "I do not know what they are. I only know they are gluten-free, and thus, vengeful." Karen clapped again. Someone took a photo. The therapist whispered, "That's the spirit." Zarnok nodded grimly, then pocketed a second stress duck, just in case. They walked out slowly, him with his badge, her with his emotional remains. The sun was setting. Someone screamed, "Namaste," from the parking lot. Zarnok looked at the sky and muttered, "I feel something, possibly healing." "Possibly indigestion," Lyssa said. "Possibly both." Then he turned to her. "When this is over, we burn Tharvik's yoga van." Lyssa didn't even argue. She just smiled. Because honestly, that sounded like progress. But they had no idea what waited next week. No clue what horrors slumbered beneath chakra stones and lavender mists. Until they returned for episode 4, Meditation Summons My Rage. Would you survive group therapy with a cosmic warlord? Drop your emotional support weapon of choice in the comments.